Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Nathan Mihelich, Executive Director of the Illinois Recycling Foundation. I want to thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedules to be here. Before we dive in, we're recording today's webinar, and we know many of you will be watching this recording rather than attending live. That's perfectly fine. This recording will be available shortly after today's session, and we're designing this walkthrough to be just as valuable whether you're watching live or on your own time. For those of you joining us live this afternoon, please use the chat feature or raise your hand button in Zoom if you have any questions. We'll take any and all questions. Nothing is off limits. And if something is confusing to you, definitely please speak up because it's probably confusing to others too. Today's webinar is particularly important because we're going to walk through the Illinois Statewide Recycling Needs Assessment Survey step by step. This assessment is mandated by Public Act 10383 and represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to create a comprehensive picture of recycling across Illinois. The data you provide through the survey will directly inform where state funding, federal grants, technical assistance, and policy recommendations go for the next decade. If your community isn't represented in the data, your needs might not be on the table when those critical decisions get made. So just a reminder, the survey deadline is approaching. It's tomorrow, October 28th. So we're down to the wire here. Before we get into the survey walkthrough, I want to introduce Christina Siebert, Executive Director of SWANC, the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County, and Chair of the Illinois Statewide Recycling Needs Assessment Advisory Council. Christina has been instrumental in guiding us through the assessment process, and we'd be grateful if she could share a few words and expertise. Christina?
Thank you, Nathan. And I apologize, my voice has not returned. I've been fighting it for a week, so we'll do the best I can here. I'm glad to see so many of you on who are interested in getting some more information before you complete your surveys. The survey tool itself is pretty extensive and is the most comprehensive collection of data that has been undertaken in Illinois since we passed the Illinois Solid Waste Planning and Recycling Act and developed needs assessments and solid waste plans in the late 80s and early 90s. So for those who were around during that period of time, there was a lot of work done by counties to identify the waste infrastructure and waste handling methods within communities and across counties, and to develop a plan for management of waste and achievement of increased recycling thresholds over a 20-year planning period. That 20-year planning period lapsed in the early 2000s, and we've seen some sporadic efforts by certain counties and in parts of the state to keep those updated and set new goals. But for most of the state, we really haven't gone back and revisited what is happening with our waste, what opportunities exist for diverting material, and the study that the survey data that we're asking for here is going to be very useful in understanding the full picture of where recycling is available, what waste infrastructure and waste handling looks like across the state, and help us to make decisions going forward. The Advisory Council is tasked with reviewing the findings of the needs assessment and making recommendations to the governor's office and to the General Assembly in future recycling policy, particularly related to packaging and paper products. Which is pretty much everything that, for those who have recycling available, goes into a curbside recycling cart, including other items that can't go in the cart, like your various rigid plastic packaging and film plastics. This information, as I said, is going to be very important for us to set future policy. Nathan mentioned that as well. And I know that there's a possibility that several of you may not have complete information to answer all of the questions in the survey. And Caitlin will tell you that that is okay. We want as much or as little information as you have available. If you don't have the information, that's very important to know. Or if you don't have a recycling program currently, that's very important to know. We want to know where access exists today. So don't let that be a barrier in responding to the survey. And the last thing I would encourage is that if you have neighboring communities, colleagues in other communities that you know are not planning to respond to the survey because they don't think that they have much to offer, or who haven't maybe heard about it, hasn't made it to them, please encourage them to respond, because every bit of data that we get is going to be helpful. Again, I appreciate your time here today, and please do ask questions as things go through, and let us be a resource to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Christina. And on the call today, we also have the president of the Illinois Recycling Foundation, Claire Ryan. Claire, if you could share some words as well we'd love to hear from you too.
Oh, sure. Well, I just again thank you very much for being here. I don't think the importance of this, effort can really be overstated. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to I have to fill a survey out too, so I'm looking forward to going through it. And yeah, having a lively discussion afterwards as well. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Christina, and thank you so much, Claire. And now I'm excited to introduce Caitlin Reese and Wynn Cowman from Eunomia Research and Consulting. Eunomia was awarded the contract by the state to conduct this comprehensive needs assessment, and they've been working closely with us at the Illinois Recycling Foundation to ensure we capture the full picture of recycling infrastructure, access, and needs across Illinois. Caitlin will walk us through the survey today, showing us exactly what questions you'll encounter, what information you'll need to have handy, and how to complete the survey efficiently. And just a reminder, if you're watching the recording and you have questions afterwards, please reach out to us directly at Illinois Needs Assessment at eunomia.co.uk. I think that's the right email. If not, we'll put it in we'll make sure it's in the chat and in the emails, so you can contact us directly. So without further ado, Caitlin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Nathan and Christina and Claire, for the introduction. I'm going to click to the next slide and just check that this is advancing for you all. Are you seeing a new slide?
We are Illinois
Okay.
Statewide Needs Recycling Needs
Wonderful.
Assessment.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you so much again for the introduction. My name's Caitlin Reese. I am a consultant with Eunomia Research and Consulting, and we have worked on all statewide needs assessments in the last few years in the US, and are very excited to be partnering with the Illinois EPA to conduct this study in Illinois. So just to give an overview of what we'll be covering today, I'll give an overview of the statewide recycling needs assessment so we know what we're talking about and what this survey will be feeding into. I'll also briefly go over why this data collection stage is so important and why your participation in the survey is so important. And then, as Nathan mentioned, we'll do a walkthrough of the survey that we've designed for local governments, going through the different categories of questions that we'll be asking about and the types of data that you'll need to complete the survey. We'll also save a healthy amount of time at the end for questions and answers to make sure that you all have the information you need from us to complete the survey. So just to give an overview of the study that we're talking about, there are really two sets of goals and requirements that are framing this research and this study. So there's the Statewide Recycling Needs Assessment Act, which has been referenced already, and mandates a needs assessment focused on packaging and paper products specifically. This also establishes the advisory council that Christina mentioned, and is a big focus of this research effort. In addition, this study is being funded by a Swiffer grant from the federal US EPA. And so this funding has expanded the scope of the project beyond packaging and paper products, which is why you'll see some questions in the survey on other materials. So to give an overview of the whole project that is spanning many months, we are in this first task, well, the second task on the left, research and data gathering, in which we are conducting both primary and secondary research to understand what is currently happening in the state of Illinois when it comes to waste management and recycling. So in our primary research, a key part of this is the local government survey that we will be talking about today. And in addition to outreach and engagement with local governments, we are also surveying private haulers and recycling facilities around the state as well. We'll also be conducting some secondary research to fill gaps that we may have after this primary research stage. And then we'll be moving into task 3, which is where we'll take all of the information that we collect during the data gathering stage, and we'll model an assessment of the current state of recycling and waste management in Illinois. And then we will take this current state and then project into the future what might be necessary to reach the 35%, 50%, and 65% recycling rates that the state is looking to achieve in future years. So this is why the research and data gathering stage is so important, because it really feeds into not only our baseline assessment of what's happening in the state, but also what is possible when we look into the future. And then the tasks on the right, going to the right, are assessments of the surveyed materials. So this includes an assessment of the processing capacity and infrastructure in the state for all materials, as well as for packaging and paper products, the use of recycled content that is currently happening, as well as the reusability, recyclability, or compostability of packaging and paper products sold in the state. And then for all materials, we'll also be looking at market conditions, limitations, and opportunities, because as we know, materials can be collected and set up for proper recycling, but we really need the infrastructure and also the market opportunities to be there for these recycled materials. Then moving into tasks 8 and 9, we will be conducting a multilingual public education assessment. So we've already begun this task and have looked to the existing environmental justice tools that are in the state and identified the communities around Illinois that speak languages other than English, predominantly at home. And we are in the future going to be conducting a telephone survey to these communities, as well as community listening sessions to understand the types of education that they're receiving on recycling, and understand how public education could improve, and potentially multilingual public education could improve residents' understanding of how to properly sort waste and recycle in the state. In addition to that, for task 9, we'll be looking at similar EJ communities around the state and doing a mapping exercise to understand differences in access to recycling, as well as the location of recycling facilities and how those may be impacting communities around the state. All of this will be summarized in a report, which is scheduled to, the first draft of which is scheduled to be completed in June of next year. So just to reiterate the point again, task 2, which we are focusing on today, this research and data gathering stage, is really, really a crucial step in this process, as it feeds into all of the tasks that follow. So what we understand in this data collection stage will really set us up to understand fully what is going on in Illinois now and what is possible in the future. So this is, again, just a summary of, to give you a better understanding of particularly the task 3, the kind of quantitative modeling that we'll be doing, what this will really mean. So as I said, we'll be modeling a current state of what's happening in Illinois, as well as a future scenario, what will be possible. So in the current state, we'll be sharing data reflecting the materials generation in the state. And this will be by material stream and looking at various counties around the state. And then a summary of how each of these material streams is currently being handled at end of life, and the associated greenhouse gas emissions with these end of life management processes. Then when we look to the future, which is really based on the current state modeling, we'll understand what needs to happen in order to increase recovery rates of materials to the 35%, 50%, and 65% by 2035. So we'll look at a variety of options to understand how these recovery rates could be achieved. And then we will estimate the corresponding costs and capital investment that would be required to make those changes happen in order to reach those recovery rates. And additionally, will estimate the potential greenhouse gas reductions or changes in greenhouse gas emissions based on these changes to the statewide system. So now just to briefly go over the local government data collection in particular and what we're aiming to do with the local government survey. So as I've said, this step in the data collection process really supports a comprehensive assessment of what is going on in the state of Illinois. And as I've said, there is a focus on packaging and paper products, but because of the Swiffer grant and the expansion of the scope of the study, there will also be questions in the survey on materials beyond just packaging and paper products. So why should you complete the survey? I've said this a couple of times now, but the data that we collect in all of task 2 and in particular from the local government survey will be really foundational to our evaluation of what is currently happening in Illinois with recycling. And this will inform how we estimate future changes to the system, which will inform how decisions are made, as Nathan mentioned, when we look to future improvements to the statewide recycling system. And as we said, I'm going to say this a few times throughout today's webinar, any information is better than no information. We've heard from multiple local governments around the state that they might not have service in their jurisdiction, or they might not have all of the answers to the survey. First of all, if you are coming from a jurisdiction where there is no recycling service, that is information that we want to know. So please don't conflate not having service with not having information. It's really helpful for us to hear that there is a lack of service in your jurisdiction. And then again, as we go through all of these different categories of data that we're requesting, we know we're asking for a lot of information, and we just ask you to complete the survey to the best of your ability. And we really encourage you to submit the survey, even if you don't have the answers to every single question. We're not expecting that you all will be able to answer every single question. We just want to make sure we are not missing out on any information, and we're capturing as much as we can through the survey. So now I'm going to go through the local government survey in particular. So there are 5 main categories of data that the survey asks questions about, and I'll walk through each of these 5. But to give an overview, we request just general information on your jurisdiction, and then information on curbside program details, and we ask about recycling, trash, and organics, meaning food or yard waste. And then we also ask for information on drop-off sites and special materials that might be collected at drop-off sites. There are then questions on fees, costs, and rates associated with these waste services. And then lastly, there are questions on the education, outreach, and reuse programs that may be happening around the state. So I'll go through each of those categories in detail. But just to complete the overview of the survey, so we have distributed the survey already to our list of municipalities and counties around the state. And this was done through email via SurveyMonkey. So that is where the survey lives, on SurveyMonkey. And hopefully, if you are on this webinar today, you have received a link to the survey. But if not, please get in touch with this email, ilneedsassessment@eunomia-inc.com, to ensure that you have a link to the survey. We will provide that via email, and we can put that email in the chat after as well. And also this email can be used for any questions that you have related to filling out the survey as well. So now to get into the meat of it, the first category that I'll be going through is the simplest. So just the general information on your jurisdiction so that we understand who we're hearing from and what part of the state the information we get through your survey response should be associated with. So we ask for information on your jurisdiction name, as well as contact info for follow-up in case there's anything that we think may have been input incorrectly, or we may be a bit confused about and just want to clarify your survey responses. We do ask for contact info for follow-up. And then we ask for information on the number of single and multifamily households in your jurisdiction, because most of the modeling that we will do will be based on per household waste generation estimates. So the information on the households in your jurisdiction is really helpful and foundational to the modeling exercise that we do. And then we also ask for just a list of the haulers and types of waste services that are offered in your jurisdiction and any information on contracts that are currently in place to provide those hauling services. Moving into the section on curbside program details. This section is split into sections on recycling, trash, and organics, again, meaning food or yard waste. So we'll go through this in more detail for the recycling section, and then many of these questions are repeated for trash and food and yard waste. So for curbside recycling, we start by asking about the frequency of curbside recycling collection in your jurisdiction, as well as information on single versus multifamily households, trying to understand who has access to curbside recycling in your jurisdiction. So we ask this a couple of different ways in terms of the number of units or the percentage of households that may subscribe. And this is really just helping to paint a picture around who has access to curbside recycling and how it's provided in your jurisdiction. And then really important information associated with the access to recycling is any information you may have on the tonnage of recycling that is collected from your jurisdiction. We also ask for information on the types of materials that are accepted so that we can understand which types of materials are going through curbside recycling versus might be going to landfill, and any differences between jurisdictions around the state in terms of what is accepted for recycling. So to also help with that, we ask about the collection method. So this could be single stream recycling, dual stream, or multi-stream, trying to understand if there are certain materials that are accepted, but only when they're separated out in their own collection. And then we also ask about the types of containers that are used to store recycling as it's collected. And so this will help us estimate the amount of recycling that is being collected and processed from each jurisdiction. And then if you have it, we also ask for the types, for the tonnage of material by material type, but we understand that it's much more likely that you would have a general tonnage number. And so that if you have that general tonnage number, but not the tonnage by material type, that is perfectly acceptable. This, I think, is a perfect example of us trying to capture the level of detail that you might have, but if you don't have it, that is perfectly okay. Moving on to curbside trash, it's, as I said, very similar questions to the curbside recycling section, but about trash. And so one difference here is that we ask also about any seasonal or event-driven changes in the curbside trash collection, but it really is similar information in terms of how often is curbside trash collected and who has access to it. For yard and food waste, we ask, again, similar questions around the frequency of collection and who has access to it, as well as any facilities in the area where where these materials are being sent. Moving on to the next section, we also ask for information moving away from curbside program, but into drop-off sites that are available in your jurisdiction. So it's similar types of information that we're looking for, but specific to drop-off sites. So a key type of information that we ask about is access. So who has, so how many drop-off sites exist in your jurisdiction and who has access to those sites. So it might be that there's one drop-off site in your jurisdiction and only residents of your jurisdiction are able to drop off materials there, or it may be that neighboring jurisdictions are also able to drop off materials at the drop-off point located in your jurisdiction. So that's the type of information we're looking for there. And if you have it, estimates of the number of customers that are using those drop-off sites is helpful for our estimating purposes as well. Similar to the curbside programs, we ask about the types of materials that are accepted at these drop-off sites and any information you might have on the tonnages that are collected from the drop-off sites. We also know that the drop-off sites may accept both residential and commercial tonnage. So if you have information on the estimated split at those of that might be associated with residential specifically, that's helpful information for us to have, but we understand that may be less likely. And again, any changes in seasonal or event-driven changes in the drop-off collection. So if there are drop-off sites that only happen at certain times of the year, or if there are big changes in the seasonal, big seasonal changes in the tonnages that you see going through the drop-off sites, that sort of information is helpful. Lastly, we ask about other special materials that may be collected at these drop-off sites. As we know, drop-off sites often see other materials besides those that typically go through curbside recycling programs. So we're hoping to capture information on that as well. Moving into the fees, costs, and rates set of questions. This is where we ask for information on how households are paying for their waste services. And so if you have information on the rate structure, this is where we'll ask about that. So trying to understand if households pay for their waste services and it's all bundled, where maybe they pay for recycling, trash, and food and yard waste all in one fee, or it might be broken out. And we also understand that food and yard waste, the way that residents are paying for food and yard waste collection varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So this is where you'll see a handful of questions that seek to understand as much detail as possible around what each of the different services may cost. And this is, again, another example of if you only have the rate and it's all three bundled and it's just the one rate that you have information on, that's helpful and we want to know that. So don't be intimidated by the questions being broken out in such detail. But if you do have information on the fee and maybe which portion of the fee is associated with recycling versus trash versus food and yard waste, that's a level of detail that's also really helpful for us. In this section on costs, we'll also ask around if there are any subsidies for solid waste and recycling services in your jurisdiction, as well as if you know on information on tipping fees per ton. But in this cost section, this is where we are also asking for this information from facilities and haulers as well. So we're hoping that we'll get information from local governments and can kind of merge all of the different sources and again, receive as much information in Illinois as we can so we can paint a full picture. But please don't be too intimidated by these questions on costs. We also have some questions in here for jurisdictions that are offering their own services. And so if you answer earlier on in the survey that you run and operate your own services, maybe as a municipality, then you'll receive more detailed questions later on what the cost to run those services and those sorts of questions that we won't ask of most local governments filling out the survey. Moving into the final section on education outreach and also reuse programs. We will ask about the types of recycling education and outreach that are being provided in your jurisdiction, as well as the number of full-time staff that are supporting recycling programming, as well as the languages the different languages that are being used to provide this education. So if you think back to the slide from earlier on with the overview of all of the different tasks in the project and how we might be looking to the future state and how those higher recovery rates for materials can be achieved. We've seen in past projects that education and outreach can be, in addition to other levers, can be a really important one to reach those higher recovery rates. And so this type of information will help us understand what's currently happening, where improvements can be made, and particularly the number of staff associated with that will help to inform our estimates of cost changes with improvements to the recycling system. And then lastly, we'll ask for any information you might have on reuse programs that are currently happening in your jurisdiction. So just to quickly go over the different types of questions that you'll see in their survey, we have done what we can to make the survey as quick as possible for you all in terms of it being multiple choice rather than open-ended. Free response questions, but there are also some questions where we want to give you the opportunity to elaborate or provide more details and explain nuances in your jurisdiction. So for the most part, you will see multiple choice questions where you'll be selecting from a predefined set of options, but there will be some that are verbal or text boxes where, excuse me, where they are open-ended and you can respond with a few sentences. And then there are also some questions that are numerical. So for example, when we ask about the tonnages of recycling, these questions they look similar in that they're just a box where you can type in information. But we have heard from survey respondents that this has tripped them up a little bit because these boxes where we're asking for a number, it will only accept a number. So if you, for example, add the word ton at the end of the number, it will not accept that as an answer. You need to just put in the number. Or if you type out, say, TEN instead of writing the number 10, the survey will give you an error message and ask you to redo that question. So that's just a heads up on those numerical questions that we ask for. Now, I know I've gone through many types of data and many different types of questions that we will be asking about. And so I did want to provide a summary of the survey data needs to try and highlight the information that is most critical or most important. And this was very hard to do because, as I've said, we are really trying to gather as much information as possible about the state of Illinois. And I don't want you all to think, okay, this is all I have to do, and the rest of the questions are useless. If you provide any information you provide through the survey, we will take into consideration and will inform the modeling that we are doing on the current and future state in Illinois. And we also recognize that the survey is very long and want to direct you all to some of the very important pieces of information that we're looking for. So first, of course, the jurisdiction name is very important. If you provide information and we can't associate it to a certain jurisdiction, it's not all that helpful to us. And I think the jurisdiction name may be one of the only required questions in the survey. So you probably can't even submit the survey without putting that in. Then when we look to the three key categories of curbside services, drop-off services, and cost information, for curbside and drop-off, we really want information on the availability of those services in your jurisdiction and any information on tonnages. And this is for the three streams of trash, recycling, and yard and food waste. Then when we look at cost for those three streams as well, any information on per household fees will be very helpful. So again, all information that we receive through the survey, we will use and will really help us in this process of understanding what's going on in Illinois and what improvements could be made to reach higher recovery rates and improve the overall statewide recycling system. And also, these are some of the most critical pieces of information. So just really quickly before we move into the Q&A section, I just want to reiterate that this email address, ilneedsassessment@eunomia-inc.com, is where we will take any and all questions about the survey and get back to you and help you complete the survey. And then also, if for any reason you have not yet received a link to the survey, please reach out to this email and we will provide that as quickly as possible. And then also, as Christina mentioned, please help spread the word. We have done what we can to distribute the survey through the email list that we have, the email database that we have created for all of the municipalities and counties. And we're also working with the different waste agencies in the state. And we are partnering with IRF, of course. But we know that you all have really strong networks and peers and counterparts in other jurisdictions. So please do what you can to spread the word about the survey. I've listed here the survey deadline is October 28th, which is tomorrow. And if you're here today, you got the little sneak peek that we will be extending that deadline to give you all a bit more time to complete the survey. But please do submit as soon as you can, and you'll be hearing more formally about that deadline extension via email in the next couple days. So I think that is it, and we will move into some Q&A, and I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that we can see each other and I can see the chat better. I see one question in the chat, at least, about is it possible to get the survey questions prior to entering and clicking through the survey? So yes, in a couple ways. We have provided in the intro to the survey, there are links to documents that share, similar to the slides today, an overview of the different types of information that you will need to complete the survey, which will hopefully help you compile that information and prepare to sit down and take the survey in one go. And also, Greg, I'm happy to follow up with you directly and share a PDF of the survey if you think it would be helpful. The reason we haven't provided that complete list out of the survey is because we have done what we can to set up the flow of the survey so that if you answer yes or no to a certain question, you will receive less questions if they're not relevant to you. And so the way the survey prints out, it prints all of the questions at once. So you may, in that read through of the survey printout, see questions that wouldn't actually appear for you as you go through the survey because they're not relevant to you. But we can provide that to you individually if you'd like to see it.
Has anyone taken the survey yet, or at least gotten through a couple questions and would like to just share any feedback or have any thoughts for the group? Caitlin, you did a fantastic job walking us through it. I think that people, a lot of the questions that people may have had may have been answered in that presentation. So we're not seeing any more questions here.
I can ask a couple if you don't mind.
Yes, please, Claire.
I've always got nerdy detailed questions. So I guess I had a question about like multifamily. And I was just curious how for the purpose of answering the survey is Eunomia defining multifamily? Because what you often see in waste contracts is that is usually like 4 units and under would be included. So like very small apartment buildings, duplexes, that kind of thing would be included in the service, but like large multifamily buildings probably wouldn't. So I was just trying to understand that better.
Yeah, good question. That is exactly how we split out single versus multifamily. We've seen it different in different states, and what we heard from folks in Illinois was that 4 units is really the cutoff. So that's how we have structured the survey, and we'll be conducting the modeling based on that above or below 4 units.
Okay. All right. So when we see multifamily, we should be thinking more than 4 units. Okay. And then I guess my other question is kind of particular to unincorporated, but when it's saying how many households have access to like curbside trash and recycling, does that mean like through a franchise agreement that their township or county is providing, or does it mean at all? Because I mean, most like unincorporated residents that are in a township that don't have that service, most of them contract individually with a waste hauler because you still have trash and you can't just throw it in your backyard. So.
Yeah, I can help answer that one, Caitlin. So it is applying, it's asking whether or not they have access. So regardless of whether the county provides that service, or regardless of who provides it, we're just wanting to know how much of the county has access to recycling. And that was actually a comment that I was going to add, is that we recognize that there are probably some jurisdictions out there that don't get super involved in waste management whatsoever. And so we tried to, as Caitlin said, structure the survey so that you don't get a lot of these questions. But we still want to know, so you're in that case, you may be answering these questions as a customer, like from what you know as a customer, like how much do you pay for your recycling and trash? Is it bundled? What is that cost? That sort of information is very pertinent. Answer it. If that is the case for your jurisdiction, answer it that way. As a customer, this is what I know about trash and recycling. So yeah. Or maybe you're not a customer, but you happen to know what others, what there's multiple haulers and you know what this one charges and you know what that one charges. All of that is great information.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I think that wraps up today's webinar. Again, the contact information has been included in this recording, and we'll send it out in the email that goes out, sending this to everyone. We do encourage you to finish that survey just as quickly as possible, and then please share the word about this this survey and why it's important to your colleagues, because the effort is to get as many municipalities, counties, and townships to participate, and that job is difficult, especially finding the correct person at each government entity to take this survey. So if you have colleagues in your neighboring communities that you know of, and can just ask them if they've heard about it and can possibly send the link, that would be greatly appreciated. So thank you so much for attending today. Again, please reach out if you have any additional questions. Thank you to Caitlin and Wynn from Eunomia, Claire from IRF, and Christina from SWANC and the Advisory Council. We appreciate your time. Please follow up if you have any additional questions. Have a great day, everyone.